my FPL Game Week 13 team selection. In today's video, we're going to have a look at how my team is lining up going into Game Week 13. We'll have a look and some potential transfers. I am really focusing on my defense, although there are a couple of forwards in both Jackson and Joao Pedro who I don't own in my team, who I am really jealous of trying to buy over the next couple of weeks as well. We'll have a look at captaincy. It's a big decision for me this week. It's a big decision of a lot of you, because that's what happens when Mo Salah goes up against Erling Haaland. We'll discuss all of that, my planned transfers, what I plan on doing, and my lineup going into Game Week 13. What is up, everyone? FPL Harry here. Before we dive in, 2,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you're new around here as well. And we're going to look at Game Week 13. And if anyone saw my tweet, unfortunately, this is the second time I have recorded this video. I fully edited it. Was uploaded, ready to go on Thursday morning. I'm hoping it's still going to be ready to go at 9:30. If it's slightly late, this is why. I recorded it, edit it, and this is a lesson always. I try and get ahead sometimes, record before the Champions League, and every time, someone always gets injured. And this time it was Konate. And I spoke so much in my video, as I have done every week, about a plan to buy Konate and my other transfers sort of going around it. And now he looks like he's picked up an injury. So we'll get into all of that once we get to it. A quick review of how Game Week 12 got on. I got 77 points. It was a very, very nice green arrow. 79 up to 31k. So sitting inside the top 50k at this point in the season is fantastic. Team did pretty well. The Arsenal clean sheet finally came in. I had Saka, who is one I'm very happy with and probably the best return of the week, because it looks like a lot of people are trying to find ways to buy Saka, and I'm happy I've held him for a few weeks now. Salah, of course, with the captaincy armband, very happy with that. And then Matheus Cunha. I'm not complaining. I got pretty lucky with a few of the returns this week. There could have been more, though. Semenyo hit the bar. Palmer had a shot blocked on the line. Isak had a goal ruled out for offside. And Burmo didn't do very much. And then, of course, benched Mykolenko. You have all shouted at me in the comments every single week for benching Mykolenko over Lewis. And I did it again this week. And I will do it again in the future, although I might end up selling Mykolenko this week. It's the one decision I got wrong. Fabianski also looking like a not bad long-term prospect. So happy he is in my squad. But let's have a look at Game Week 13. So to start off up front, the first thing is that Chris Wood to Joao Pedro transfer. I've spoken about it quite a lot over the past couple of videos and over the past couple of weeks as well. It is a transfer I plan on making, although I do think I'll make it going into Game Week 14, not in Game Week 13. I missed the price rise for Joao Pedro. I think it happened on Saturday evening after he did get a goal and an assist in Game Week 12. And now he looks unlikely to rise before the Game Week 13 deadline. I am using Live FPL at the moment to check the price changes. Their site is really user-friendly. Like, not a plug, not an ad at all. Like, it's really user-friendly. They explain their stuff really well on Twitter if you follow them there as well. And he's not predicted to rise tonight on Wednesday. And he's not anywhere really close to rising tomorrow on Thursday. And then he might rise on Friday. But of course, they play Friday evening. So the plan at the moment is to keep Chris Wood for Ipswich at home and then sell him to Joao Pedro once that Brighton Southampton game finishes on Friday night. Now, I understand that it's not the best to buy Joao Pedro after he plays Southampton, but I still think he's the best value player in the game at the moment. I still like him long term, sort of over the next 15-20 game weeks. So as long as he stays fit, yes, I'm not buying him this week, but I still think I want Chris Wood for one more week. Now, it comes down to who do I think scores more points in Game Week 13, because if I'm going to make that transfer regardless, Ipswich at home for Chris Wood or Southampton at home from Joao Pedro, I think it's really, really close. There is a small possibility that I make the transfer going into the deadline with that fixture at home Southampton for Joao Pedro, but at the moment, I think I'm going to hold on to Chris Wood. The other forward transfer is correcting what I feel like is a mistake, and that is selling Alexander Isak. It is not going to happen in Game Week 13. 100% I'm not selling Isak in Game Week 13. I'm going to give him Crystal Palace away. He then goes into Liverpool at home in Game Week 14. Part of me, that a reason I didn't want to buy Jackson is because I feel like there's a decent chance that Chelsea get him deliberately booked against Aston Villa. So he served his one-match suspension for 5 yellow cards against Southampton and then is ready to go from Game Week 15 onwards with no sort of yellow card suspension hanging over him. Now, I also worried, I think, too much about a potential rotation even if Jackson wasn't suspended. So, of course, I'm going to give Isak the Crystal Palace away game. If Isak disappoints again, because Newcastle were very disappointing on Monday night, if they disappoint again, Jackson looks good again and doesn't get booked, then I might look to make the Isak to Jackson swap, save a bit of money and go to Jackson from Game Week 14 onwards. It is a very specific group of things that need to happen for me to make that transfer. but I just thought I'd mention it. So in case we get to the weekend, and because it's a Tuesday deadline, I might end up going early on a couple of transfers, particularly the Wood to Joao Pedro one, potentially on Friday evening, either before or after the deadline. And then Isak to Jackson, depending on how the games go. That's less likely, but it is definitely something I'm thinking about. And I feel like I've made a bit of a mistake with Isak, given what I saw from Newcastle for a lot of that game on Monday night. And then looking at defensive transfers. So to start with the obvious one, Mykolenko to Van Hecke would be a real boost to my team, particularly this week. Southampton at home is one of the best defensive fixtures that you can get. I would go Van Hecke over the likes of Colwell, over the likes of a Kirkes, over the likes of a Mazraoui, for example, at Manchester United. Partly because I like the fixture best this week over a Kirkes who goes away to Wolves, or going for a Levi Colwell who has Aston Villa at home. Van Hecke I like the most for Brighton, particularly because we've also got a Stupinan. He plays at left back, but he's not as far forward as we have in our sort of minds historically. You could also buy Veltman at right back, but the issue is once the likes of Lamptey might be back in the squad over Christmas, we've seen Veltman miss games in the past. Van Hecke got the Campsey armband for part of the game last week, and although Dunk is 4.4, we don't know he's fully fit, and Igor may well keep that place at left centre-back. It is definitely not guaranteed that we see Dunk come back in, and we don't even know if he's fit for Southampton at home. The other transfer that I spoke about quite a lot in my previous recording of this video was Lewis up to Konate. Now, Konate has gone off at the very end after full time against Real Madrid, limping quite badly and holding his knee. We do know that Konate doesn't have the best injury record at times, and this is a transfer I've penciled in and pushed back, and now it looks like I'm unlikely to make that transfer anytime soon. We will hear in the press conference on Friday exactly how Konate is, but it doesn't look great, right? We might hear positive stuff, and then I can look to do this move in future weeks. It wasn't ever going to be a game week 13 transfer anyway, because Konate has City at home and then Newcastle away, and he's also on 4 yellow cards. But it is something I've penciled in for a few weeks' time, because the Joao Pedro in for Chris Wood would give me the money that I need to do the Lewis to Konate move. I'll keep an eye on it, but at the moment, that move's obviously going to have to be put on the back burner, because we're not expecting Konate. Well, I'm probably not expecting him to be available this weekend, but let's see. He might make a miraculous recovery. Mykolenko to Van Hecke feels like the most obvious defensive transfer this week. So to have a look at my lineup going into the deadline, we're starting off with David Raya in goal, and we are doubling up on Arsenal in our defence with Gabriel as well. It is a fixture away at West Ham. Generally, West Ham have not been great so far this season, although they did look pretty good against Newcastle on Monday night once the first sort of 20-30 minutes of that game were out of the way. Gabriel is actually yellow flagged. He did pick up a slight knock in the Champions League and went off about 5 minutes before the end, but a lot of people are saying it's just a precaution, and actually it was more just game state and maybe to waste a little bit of time. So I don't really have any doubt that Gabriel's going to play. We're also unlikely to hear anything going into the deadline as well, so I'm just going to start him, and if he doesn't feature, then I'm just going to have someone in off my bench. We've got Aït-Nouri and then of course David Raya in there as well, who those three feel like the good options in my defence. And at the moment I do plan on making the transfer for Mykolenko to Van Hecke. The reason it's Mykolenko overselling Lewis is because in future weeks, in game week 14 and 15, Lewis has Forest at home, Palace away. And although City have not been good for quite a while now, he's more potentially useful for me than a Mykolenko is. Greaves, I'm also hoping might be back available. He has Crystal Palace at home in game week 14, so I could play him, whereas Van Hecke goes away to Fulham. So I need one of Greaves or Lewis next week, but Van Hecke is a great option this week. I haven't made the transfer. It's also possible that I roll the transfer and just take an extra week of information, because Van Hecke is actually unlikely to start for me that many weeks apart from this week. So going into game week 14, 15, 16, if I was to look to buy a Van Dijk or a Konate if he's available, Van Hecke basically doesn't get into my lineup. And part of me wonders if it's actually just worth just taking a slightly worse option this week, like playing Greaves or Mykolenko with their bad fixtures, and just taking the extra transfer into next week. I think I'm about 75% certain that I'll do the Van Hecke transfer, but there is 25% of me that thinks Southampton weren't that bad against Liverpool last week. They've also had, a nice week's rest. They go on that Friday night. If there's no clean sheet for Brighton on Friday, I will regret buying Van Hecke. This is the main reason I'm buying him, to strengthen my team. So there is a little bit of me that makes me want to wait and just not do it and roll the transfer. But I think at the moment I probably will. Into midfield, we have Semenyo with his yellow card suspension. So it makes my benching headache in my front seven pretty easy this week. Despite being away at Wolves, it actually is quite good because I don't have to play him against 8 Norrie. So it's actually worked out quite well that this is the week that he's got his suspension. He'll be back into my lineup, I'm sure, for Spurs at home in the midweek. And it's quite nice that going into that midweek where there's a lot of risk of rotation, people are talking a lot about will he start, won't he start, that I'll have a fully rested Semenyo having not played at the weekend. Looking at my starting midfield, we've got Cole Palmer, a few blanks on the past couple of games. With the likes of Felix and Enzo pushing up, there is times where Palmer drops a little bit deeper. He's not feeling quite as good as he was earlier on in the season. However, I do expect Aston Villa at home to be a game that suits him quite well. They're a team that like to play a high line. They like to attack. And I think Palmer will get into more of those attacking spaces. And let's not forget that Madueke blocked a shot from Palmer on the line. And if that goes in, no one's really questioning Palmer's blanks, which I am seeing mentioned a little bit. But I have absolutely no worry. I wanted to move to the Palmer, Saka, Salah squad structure. And that's where I've got to. So, of course, Saka in next away at West Ham. He looks so good now. Odegaard back is such a boost for anyone who owns Saka or is looking to buy Saka. I'm so happy that Odegaard is back. Saka has said himself that he had a smile on his face the day that Odegaard came back out to full training because he knows how much of a difference that makes. And even when you add Timber at right back, that right-hand side last year when it was Odegaard, Saka and Ben White was fantastic. And it is now the same again when it's Timber, who might be worth a buy if you fancy a bit of a differential. But Saka is in. Away at West Ham, I really like. And Bournemouth's not been great, but it is Leicester at home. Leicester have been away on their Christmas party in Copenhagen, so they don't feel like they're particularly going to be ready for this Brentford fixture, the Leicester at home for Brentford in game week 13. So I'm happy enough with him. The fixtures after this week turn a little bit more, so this might be one of the last weeks I own him for, but he's not a priority sell, and he's got Leicester at home. So he's in there, but I don't think I'll captain him. And then, of course, Mo Salah. Missed a penalty in the Champions League. We've always spoken about, is McAllister actually a better penalty taker than Salah? He never seems to lose them, and I don't expect him to lose them now, but it's always something that's in my back of my mind. But City are conceding chances. Gvardiol, who he's up against, has been horrific defensively recently. I think Liverpool will win that game. Then we move up front. So as I said, I don't plan on making the Joao Pedro transfer, but even if I make the Van Heck move, I still have a spare transfer, so it's not impossible that I do Wood to Joao Pedro before the deadline on my deadline stream on Friday evening, but I don't think I will. If there's anything in the Forest press conference that explains why Chris Wood was benched last week and might mean that Chris Wood's benched again, then maybe I do, but I think that's a very, very slim chance. So holding Chris Wood, holding Isak, both of those, as I mentioned, could end up going into game week 14 for Joao Pedro and Jackson, depending on what happens this weekend. And then it is Matheus Cunha. The starting 11 picks itself pretty much, unless I don't buy Van Heck, and then I have a choice of Liverpool, Greaves, and Mikalenko. Greaves, we don't even know if he's available, but he's probably the one I would start if I don't buy Van Heck. In terms of captaincy this week, it's wide open. Any of my front 7 could probably get it. I don't think it'll be Isak, just because I didn't like what I saw on Monday night. It probably won't be Chris Wood, because I'm actually quite impressed with Ipswich. And actually, I don't think it'll be Cunha, because I'm pretty impressed with Bournemouth as a team. I think people are going on the Cunha captain, but he's massively overperformed his data, and I just think Bournemouth are a pretty decent side. It's one of my midfielders. Of course, they get the extra point for the goal. They get the extra point if their team keeps a clean sheet as well. I don't think it's going to be on Burmo, just from what I've seen on Brentford recently, which does leave the 3 premiums. They are the ones I trust, and I play a little bit of boring FPL at times, and they are the ones I trust. They are expensive for a reason. So Palmer, Saka, Salah are the 3 that I narrow it down to. West Ham weren't bad on Monday night. Villa have just played Champions League. But I cannot look past the form that City looked defensively, even with them scoring goals midweek in the Champions League. They then conceded 3 again. So at the moment, Salah has the captaincy and Palmer remains with the vice captaincy as it was earlier on in the week. And I just can't see myself moving it from there. It might do, but I can't really see it happening. I think it will end up on Salah. It might end up on Palmer, but outside of those 2, I'd be very surprised if I captain anyone that isn't Salah or Palmer. I will also be at the Chelsea game at the weekend, so that probably means I won't captain Palmer because I don't want to have extra fuel in the fire. So Salah has the armband at the moment and Palmer has the vice captain. It's really only one planned transfer, potentially of Van Heck in for Mikalenko. Chris Wood to Joao Pedro before or after the deadline. Let me know, in game week 13 alone, Wood at home to Ipswich or Joao Pedro at home to Southampton, who scores more points? Let me know. Simple question in the chat. Any other questions you have, drop it in the comment section down below as well. We'll be back with final decisions on Friday morning because there's a Friday evening deadline and there'll be a stream on Friday evening as well. So set your reminders, your notifications for when those videos do go live so you don't miss the deadline and any final press conference news. Any questions you have, drop it below. 2,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe before you go, and I'll be back again very soon.